So I'm going to be Tina today. So tell me a little about what happened, Tim. Can you tell me a little bit more of what led up to the restraint? Well, so you were not going to hurt Josh? But how was Terry supposed to know for sure that you weren't going to hurt Josh? Maybe you weren't going to, but you have a history of hurting others when you get upset. Does that sound like a scenario that has happened to you before? So, with that being said, how was Terry supposed to know that wasn't going to be happening again? Well, the threat of you hurting Josh was there. Terry has to protect the other kids as well as yourself. If she felt like you were going to hurt Josh, why don't you think she has an obligation to protect the other children? I just want to say we don't see you like that. We all want what's best for you as well as we all know you can do better. But maybe the next step is showing us that you can do better is to not react to how Josh treats you. Why do you feel that way? Yes, I can understand that it's a terrible feeling being held down. But how terrible would you feel if you actually hurt Josh and got another charge? How do you think Terry would have felt knowing she could have helped Josh and didn't? Maybe so. Tim leaves the room unsatisfied with the conversation. Tina feels as though her point was not getting across to Tim. They both feel as though their ethical views on the subjects were not being validated nor heard. Mhm. Um, so I believe that it could have been handled differently. Um, so again, working in places where it's hands off, we're not allowed to do restraints, and then places that we are. I feel like there could have been another option that she could have done where, like, was Tim heated enough that he wouldn't listen to anyone? Could she have asked Josh to go to a room? Um, Again, it's a lot of having to be there to see the situation, to make the call. Um, it doesn't really lay it out in her presentation what exactly happened. It's just the aftermath. Um, could a chemical restraint have been used? Is that a part of Tim's protocol? Is that a part of his BSP? If he has BSP, um, I feel like maybe a chemical restraint would have helped, especially with the aftermath. Maybe he would have went to Josh after Terry held him down because now he feels like Josh made this happen. Um, a lot of the information that we would base this off of would be if you were there in person. We can make a call now, but it might not make sense to being actually there in person. So yeah, I just feel like there could have been a different route instead of a physical restraint used. Yeah, yeah. Just from personal views, like it's easier to make the call um, there in person um, than the aftermath. And no matter what kind of restraint is used, someone might have something to say. He might not have taken the chemical restraint. Um, so it's just dependent how Terry's comfortable. Like she was comfortable restraining him, and she's not as the best course of action. Someone else might have done something else. It's just about your comfortability in that moment. Um, and we would have to look at his file, because maybe he doesn't have the chemical restraint or he has to be physically restrained. He might have something like intermittent explosive disorder. We didn't go into that, obviously. So it's hard to say if it was an ethical restraint, um, just based on what we have. Um, but no matter what, like it would have been hard to make a call. So, uh, yeah. Question two. Do you think the consequences of how Tim feels outweighs Terry's proactive restraint? Example, does Tim feeling unsafe and unheard outweigh Terry's decision to proactively restrain and to prevent him from hurting another youth? So we did kind of touch on this as well. Um, it's hard to say coming from the outer layer being the aftermaths. Um, But if, let's say, he had his hands balled up, ready to strike, then yes, 100% restrain him, make sure that everyone else is out of the way. Uh, just from, yeah. So, like, we don't want Tim to obviously feel unsafe and unheard. He does have the right to feel the way he feels. Um, but I feel like he also needs to understand that Terry was doing it to prevent him getting another charge, possibly getting hurt, and then Josh obviously getting hurt. Yeah. We yeah. And we also don't have, like, maybe Josh is also explosive and would have hit back. So, no. Yeah, every situation's different. Um, we don't know how Josh would have reacted if Tim was actually going to hit. Um, Tim could just be saying that he wasn't going to hit. Um, like I said, in my perspective, there could have been a different way to diffusing the situation. But again, we haven't worked hands on with Tim in this situation, right? Um, so it's kind of hard to say if it was overprotective or neglect. I wouldn't say it's neglect. Because Terry felt like it was for the greater good. Um, yeah, exactly. And then just the fourth question I have is, do you believe that um, a physical restraint was necessary, or do you think another restraint could have been used, like a chemical? Um, Again, I kind of touched on it, but I feel like a chemical would have been um, a good way to go as well. If there was signs leading up to this interaction. Um, Tim kind of touched on it in the scenario that Josh has been kind of pestering him. So I feel like maybe separating them and a chemical restraint could have been effective. But there might have also been, like, not enough time to give the chemical restraint enough time to actually, like, go through his body. Yeah. 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 And realistically, like, um being in a group home where my client does have intermittent explosive disorder, we don't want to, like, we're hands off, right? For the most part, unless it's needed. um we do the chemical restraint, but sometimes that doesn't work before you get hurt. So it's really just like having to be there to see the situation. And I feel like even if it's written, the, like, words don't do justice to the situation. Um, yeah, and none of us really want to do a restraint. Yeah, yeah, and it's always a learning curve, like you said. Like, we don't know exactly how many fights, what's a trigger for Tim. Um, so, like I said, it's easier being on the outside looking in and judging, but being there in the moment, as it's happening, you have to make a call. And a lot of times it's a split second. Thanks, bye.